To you. Good morning 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 to you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. We are back at it. It is Monday. I know this is for some people it's yay, it's Monday, right? And for other people it's like, it's Monday. It's grind day, right? This is an opportunity for us to come together, for us to share on a subject matter. This is Motivation Monday for those of you who are new to what we do at Daring Dialogues. Every single day we have a different subject matter. Mondays we do motivation. And so far we've been working on our motivation as a kingdom disciple and biblical hospitality. On Tuesdays, we cover Black history, world history, and right now we are working on a illustrated look at Black American history from the perspective of one man's family's journey. And also we've been talking about the effect of historical immigration and how that is affecting our lives now. And it's almost like as we continue to address certain things about immigration, you start seeing those things roll out. Good morning to everyone. God knows best. Good morning, Lady Andrea. Good morning. I believe that's Lady Apostle down there. Good morning, Lady Barbara. Good morning, Pastor Ben. And so we've been talking about different things, and it seems like almost right as we just finished covering something, we will see something in the news present day that applies to something we've been teaching about. Wednesdays, we teach on relationships, healthy relationships. Right now we're focused on singles and in terms of dating, and we're also focused on married people at the same time, so we like to give information on both. Thursdays, we deal with theology, worldviews, etc. And then Fridays, we come and conclude our week by dealing with financial health and your physical health in general. All right? So that's what we do. We like to cover something every single day so that whatever subject matter you're interested in, you can follow the teachings or the readings on that particular day. I want to say, first of all, thank you to Pastor Ben. When I was down in South Florida a couple weeks ago, he took some time out of his schedule to actually meet with me and another friend of mine, and we really got a chance to actually meet him beyond the online persona. And Pastor Ben found out very quickly that I am who I say I am. I don't mince words. Who I am while I'm on screen is who I am. So that was a very, very enjoyable conversation and fellowship, and Pastor Ben brought me some wonderful gifts. So I want to say personally, publicly, thank you for sowing into my life. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. And this is actually one of the gifts that I got, because Pastor Ben knows that I like printed tees. And so the shirt says I am healed, and it just so happens to match my grandpa sweater. And if you know me very well, many people know that I like to dress like myself. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't like anybody else's style per se. I like grandpa sweaters, so that's what I like to rock with. That's what I like to roll with. So you might see me break out a couple more grandpa sweaters. They are actually very, very comfortable. This is a lady sweater, all right, for the religious, but it's called the grandpa sweater because of how it is made, and it is very, very comfortable. If you're interested in that particular style, you can actually look it up. It's called the grandpa sweater, and you'll see it comes in an array of colors. So thank you, Ben. I appreciate you, and I appreciate who you are to the body of Christ. So let's talk about biblical hospitality. Let's get back into that conversation. And we've been talking through this book, The Simplest Way to Change the World. Believe it or not, after today, we'll only have 2 more chapters in this book, and then we'll be switching to some more material on Monday. And then also today, we're going to look at kingdom disciples, and we're going to talk about that thing called love being the marker. Love. I think it's Kirk Franklin, right, who says love, a word that comes and goes, but few people really know what it means to really love somebody. I took a sign language class. I had to sign that as my final project. Don't ask me to sign it right now. I'm a little rusty. But we're going to look at love today. What does love look like? How do people know that we have that thing called love? But we've been talking about how do you meet your neighbor? How do you meet your neighbor? For some of us, what I'm learning is that for some of us, this is very easy depending on your schedule, depending on where you live. How do you meet your neighbor may not be as much of a challenge to you as it is for someone who may live in a rural setting or environment, like I did for a couple of years, where our neighbors were spaced apart, you know, about every half mile or mile, there was a neighbor, right? Some of us may live in very urban settings, so this issue of meeting your neighbors is not that hard to resolve, right? But one of the things that the author here talks about is, first of all, focusing on people who live close to you. And we talked about being willing to initiate meeting your neighbor. Being willing to initiate meeting your neighbor. The second thing we're going to look at today is go outside. Now, obviously, if you're in colder climates, right, you're going to have to facilitate how you go outside or what you do outside, because obviously we're not telling people to go outside in a snowstorm, right, to try to meet people or to meet your neighbors. Although in a couple years back here, a snowstorm actually was very helpful in us meeting our neighbors, because everybody was outside trying to help each other dig their way out, like literally dig your way out of your house, dig your way to your car, help clear after our roads had been cleared, but still other things had not been cleared. So it was a good opportunity for my husband to get out and meet all the other men in our community that were out doing the same thing. They wound up helping each other out, having conversation during that time. So that was a time for him to actually meet the other men in our community by simply being helpful. All right. So go outside. As the writer here says, this may come as a news flash, but your neighbors don't live in your house. So if you never leave your humble abode, even though it may be such a sanctuary for you, right, and a comfort, if you never leave it, you'll never meet any of your neighbors. And I know that there are some believers who say, well, I don't really care to meet the people in my neighborhood. When I come home, I want to go in my house. I want to shut the door, right? I want to get some hot chocolate going, or my tea or my coffee or my soft drink. I want to prop my feet up, and I don't really want to have to deal with what is on the outside. Remember, we talked about that. Sometimes, especially as Black Americans, our homes right now may be the only sanctuary that we have. I had an interesting incident yesterday as we were out and about. We had finished ministry for the day, and we have service late. Our service is like from 2 to 3:30, 2 to 4. And so after that, we tend to go and have our dinner. So we were at dinner, and I was We were actually getting ready to leave at this point, and next thing I know, I felt something, because I have a long down coat that goes all the way to my ankles, and I felt something. I felt something moving under my coat, and I was like, what in the world? But I looked down, and it was a 2-year-old underneath my coat, little white fella, and he was pulling on my coat, and his mom was like, oh, I have that coat. He thinks that you have my coat. And my husband was like, bro, that's not your mama's coat. Y'all pray for my husband. So what am I saying? I'm saying that even when you go outside, right, you may have awkward interactions with other people that may spark a conversation. Sometimes it doesn't spark a conversation. Like that didn't spark a conversation, but it kind of broke the ice from where we were, because all of the people in there, unfortunately, were kind of looking like they had never seen black people. But because this child came underneath my coat, and it was kind of an awkward moment for myself and their parents, it kind of broke the ice. Like, okay, you can come get your 2-year-old from underneath my clothing, thank you. But I was able to at least say something to the parent. You know, I didn't want to be angry or anything like that, because it's a 2-year-old, right? A 2-year-old does not know any better, right? But I was able to say something to the parent, even though she didn't address her child running over to us. And you don't run over and start getting under strangers' clothes. That's a whole other subject matter. But the point was that it kind of broke the ice, and it broke the atmosphere, so that it was a little on the comical side, but I was able to say something to the mother, you know, to say, I hope you all are having a good dinner, you know, have a nice day, something. It didn't have to be a whole lot, right, to open up a conversation. And so a lot of times, sometimes we're looking for a big break in order to address people or address our neighbor, but sometimes it can be something that small that can break the ice, that can get you an opportunity to say hello, have a nice day, where are you from, etc., etc. All right? So, as the author says, if you never leave your humble abode, you'll never meet any of your neighbors. They're not going to bust up in your living room and introduce themselves. And if they do, you probably want to call the authorities. This means you need to go outside often, daily, consistently, as much as you can. For people who work at home, right? You may get in the habit of just eating your lunch at your house. But sometimes you might want to pick a day or 2 days a week where you make a specific trip to go have lunch in your community. Maybe pick a place that you like to eat at, that you can go there consistently, so that you can begin to converse and talk and meet other people outside of your space. All right? So going outside often, going outside daily, going outside consistently, as much as you can, because that's pretty much the only place you're going to meet people who live close to you. Going on walks is a brilliant way to meet those in your neighborhood, and it also gives you the added benefit of exercise. As it begins to warm up here, prayerfully, today it's not warm, but for people who like the cold, you can put on your exercise garments that has all the heat controls in it. They got all this fancy stuff now for exercise. And you can go on walks in your neighborhood. You can go to your local park. I know when it gets a little bit warmer for me here, that's what I like to do. I like to go and walk the trail and walk some of the trails near where I live and learn the environment. I like to go by places that have bodies of water, right, and do some walking. Obviously I like to do it when other people are out there. I don't like to go where I'm completely alone, but That's something that you can do. And if you do it pretty regularly, you'll start to figure out, and you'll start to realize that there are other people who are out there on a regular basis doing the same thing. If you have a dog or you have children, that's another benefit, because people are often more interested in meeting your pet or your children at first than they are you. Get out that leash or stroller and get moving. And as you see people you don't know, practice the always rule rather than the sometimes rule. Remember, his always rule is always try to greet the person that you encounter. As you walk, pray for people you meet, the neighbors you already know, and even the people you don't yet know. Now, I like to do that when I was living in Tallahassee, Florida. Lake Ella, if you ever go to Tallahassee, is one of the most beautiful places. I like to go in Tallahassee when I visit. But Lake Ella is a great place. That used to be like my sanctuary. I would go for walks right after church to get my exercise in. I would go for walks right after church, and I would see different people, and I started to see some people there regularly. That was a spot that I utilized to set up a prayer station where I would sit on one of the benches, and I would have a sign that says, "How can I pray for you today?" And people would come up and we would pray for them. You know, no strings attached, no come to my church or anything like that, but just being helpful and offering prayer. So again, getting out, getting outside of your confines, getting to a place where you are willing to avail yourself to meet other people. If you have a park, a playground, or a pool near your neighborhood, this is a no-brainer place for you to frequent, because it's where your other neighbors will probably gather. For us, these environments have been a fruitful place to meet and build relationship with neighbors. Another thing that helped me was moving my grill from the back of my house to the front of my house. Though it seems a little redneck, the author says, I put a weight bench out front. This switch has been an incredible opportunity for me to meet my neighbors. People either see me grilling in my front yard, and it's almost as though they cannot come talk to me. They're either drawn by the smell or just to meet the person who is grilling on his front yard, or they see me working out. Either way, it works. Get creative. He says, I planted and pastored a church in Columbia, South Carolina for 7 years before moving to the Atlanta area. When my wife and I lived in South Carolina, we were not great at engaging with our neighbors. We connected with some, but we struggled to link up with those who actually resided next door. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe a memo went out to the neighbors that said, beware, this is a pastor's house. All I know is that I rarely talked to my neighbors and they rarely spoke to me. Over time, we just stopped making the effort altogether. So what do? Build a wall and let them know how we really feel? Do we move? Obviously, that is not the answer. But for us, we did actually end up moving, but not just down the street. We moved to a different state. In the midst of our move to Atlanta, we were pumped because we believed that we'd immediately meet new neighbors who would bring us cupcakes on day one, because who doesn't like cupcakes? Believe it or not, that didn't happen. Not on day 1 or on day 30. Even though we didn't get cupcakes, we were able to hit the reset button with a new community, a new neighborhood, a new street, and new neighbors residing next door. But this did not happen overnight, and it was not easy. It took us being very intentional even to meet our neighbors, but we stuck to it. My opportunity to hit the reset button on hospitality was through a God-ordained move to a different state. But for you, it is probably not putting a for sale sign out front. Instead, it may be putting a date on the calendar and saying, this is the date that I start over. Be disciplined, be intentional, be obedient to what God may be calling you to as you hit the reset button to implement or adjust your life rhythms for the sake of hospitality. Oh, and one other place that can become a great place for you to meet people in your community is your local library. The librarians where I'm at now, they know my face when I come in there because usually I'm in there several times a week. They haven't asked me my name yet, but they'll get around to it. I know some of their names. All right. So again, they're talking about how do you get creative and how do you become more approachable with things you're already doing or places that are already normal for you to go, right? So are you going to hit the reset button in how you deal with people? I'll tell you one thing, right now in our society is a really good time to hit the reset button. If you're a white person and you don't have white friends, let me sip my OJ for a moment before I talk to you. If you're a white person and you don't have black friends, if you're a black person and you don't have white friends, now is the time. This is a perfect time for you to hit the reset button. It is. It's a good time. Why? It's a good time because people are now out in the open about how much hatred they have for other people. So this is actually a really good time for you to stand out amongst everybody that's out here showing how much hatred and dislike they have for other people. This is a time when actually your light can shine. This is a time when people are actually noticing more people who are kind, right? People who don't fly off the handle, people who are loving, actually are standing out more. So if that's you, this is actually a good time to hit the reset button on your relationships with people from a different ethnicity or culture than you. All right. So he says here, be disciplined, be intentional, be obedient. Unfortunately, most of us live in a society where isolation, where garage doors or doormen act as a moat around our personal fortress. Everybody here knows what a moat is, right? It's that little waterway, that body of water that usually surrounds a castle, and they sometimes have to let down the drawbridge in order for you to even get across to go into the fortress. And he's saying that we live in a society where if you have a garage door, you can close. If you live in an apartment building that has a doorman or a security guard, those things can act as a moat around you, right? It's one of those levels of security. If you live in a gated community, right, where you have to drive up and you have to give, sometimes depending on where you go, sometimes they ask you for your ID or they take your license plate number down. They have to call up to the person that you're supposed to be seeing, or you have to punch in a code or a number or something that goes to where you're supposed to be going, and then the gate opens. All right, that's a lot of security up front before you even get in the neighborhood. And in the region that I live in, there's quite a bit of that. Once the gate is closed, there is no getting in. This sounds a bit creepy, but I tried for a long time to meet one of our neighbors and was very unsuccessful. I finally figured out when he took out his trash every week, and by chance, I began taking out my trash at the same time. "Hey, Lee, funny seeing you here," I said. It took time, but the conversations on our trash run moved from greeting each other across the street to hanging out in the street, catching up on the week. Even though something as simple as taking out the trash, we can get creative with our intentionality. Here in Atlanta, he says, I had one neighbor I swore was in the witness protection program because he was so reclusive. I tried everything I could think of to meet him, but nothing worked. Finally, one day I sent my 4-year-old and 6-year-old children to knock on the door. FYI, this is not a parenting skill book. and invite them to join us for a cookout on the front yard. It worked. Effort, creativity, intentionality, and dying to self are all concepts that translate into practical actions of meeting those around us and inviting them into our homes and lives. Now, if you have very young children and you've never met your neighbor, I would not advise you to send your children to go meet your neighbor. All right? Just had to put that little disclaimer plug in there. Use technology. Use technology. Use technology. That's what we're doing now. While technology can fuel isolation and individual entertainment, as we have discussed previously, it can also connect people. I have met some really, really awesome, wonderful people through online community that I would not have otherwise met. And how do I know that? Because we don't live in the same regions, right? But I have been able to make some connections within the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years of people through the online community, where now I have regular conversations. We actually call each other on the phone. We have conversations beyond social media. So use technology to your advantage. One helpful way to do this is to watch TV shows with others rather than alone. Have neighbors over on Sunday nights who like the same show as you. Host parties for your local sports teams. Doing this exposes commonalities and creates shared experiences that foster deeper relationships. When you're using technology, right, you can begin to find out people that you have things in common with. A good one is go to some of the pages that you've already liked on Facebook. Go to the pages that you like, right? And see who else. It usually shows you your other friends that also like these pages or also have certain interests that you have. That's another way to utilize technology, right? To find out where your common interests are. I just recently found out that one of my friends who's going to, we met them online, but then we got a chance to meet them in person last year. But when we met them in person last year, we were talking about all different kind of subjects, so we never got around to hobbies, right? So I just recently found out that they love and are learning to play pool or to play billiards, which is what I like to say. And I really, really like to play billiards. I haven't played in a while. I'm starting to get some withdrawals. But when they come back up this way, we're going to try to make it our business to make sure that we play billiards together. So it's really looking for the commonalities, as he says, finding things that you all are interested in. And that's one way you can use technology. Believe it or not, Facebook and YouTube and Snapchat and Instagram, all these other ones out there, they're collecting information on you to find out what you like so they can better present it to you. So my question is, if they're collecting data on you, then why aren't you using the ability to look at how they use data and search and do your own data collection on people that you want to connect to? All right? It's the same thing. Think about it. If all of this information is out here and Facebook and all these other companies are utilizing that information to better sell you stuff, all right, then that means that even when you look at your friends' pages, you can look at their likes, you can look at pages they like, you can look at places they've been to, not like you're being a detective, right? Not like you're a stalker or anything like that, but you can look at it to see where are our commonalities. What are some things that we have in common? Another one, a friend of ours, I put up the thing about the lynching memorial, right? I know some people might say, lynching is not my thing, right? I get it. But I have a passion for understanding our country's history around that subject matter. I know it's a difficult subject matter. And so I wasn't necessarily looking to invite anybody to go with me to the opening of a lynching museum. But turns out because I put it up there, I found out that there are actually several people who are also interested in this subject matter, and we may actually be putting together a group of us to go and travel at the same time, to go to the new lynching museum that's opening, I believe, April 26th in Montgomery, Alabama. So through technology, you can find out what your shared interests are, all right? And that is very helpful in terms of building relationships. Another way to use technology, of course, is to take advantage of social media avenues like Facebook. My wife had actually deleted her Facebook account because she felt it had become like a black hole for her time. But she had a strong desire to have women in our neighborhood over, and she knew many of them would like to read. So she reactivated her account and used our neighborhood Facebook group as the primary channel to invite women to the first event. I still remember the night she launched the group. We had more than 30 women crammed into our living room. One who had lived in the neighborhood for more than 15 years stated, "I haven't really met a lot of people because everyone just seems so busy." And that is usually the case. Everybody either is busy or they seem so busy that you're trying to figure out, how do I jump in to their schedule to actually build this community and build relationship with them. She said, "That broke my heart. Thankfully, now on a monthly basis, a couple dozen women gather in our home to discuss their latest book while eating cookies and talking about life. God is using the simple act to bond women who would otherwise not have connected. And it all started with a heart for hospitality and an online Facebook group that led to a real life personal group. You can use social media and other apps in a positive, redeeming way when you approach them with the desire to engage and foster relationships. That is the difference. That is the difference between just being on a platform to just be on it versus actually having a purpose for why you're on the platform and having a purpose with what you do with the platform. Recently, Washington, D.C. based church planning guru Clint Clifton said, "The best church planning website is meetup.com. Although meetup.com is not a Christian organization, its mission is to facilitate neighbors getting together to learn something, do something, and share something. We don't need to recreate the wheel or start a Christian running group when we can simply jump on an app that is already out there and find others who run, and in due time, have them over to hang out. You can leverage any social media outlet to build connections. In time, the goal is for you to transition as many relationships as possible from online to real life or real life, right? So there are some people I see on social media. I can go look at their profile. I can look at their persona, right? And I can decide whether or not I want to invest time in taking that relationship online to real life. And believe it or not, people are making these kinds of decisions every single day, and their snap judgments, whether they actually recognize their brain is going through the process of doing that, right? So there are certain people you see online and you read either a comment they've said or they've posted something of interest to you, right? And you're like, this is interesting. Let me go to this person's page and see what they're about. We can either get there and say, whoa, time out. I need to actually block this person so we never cross paths again, all right? Or you can get to their page and you can be pleasantly surprised, right? And you can say, wow, this person is really on their game. This person is a really interesting person. This person and I have lots of things in common. Let me reach out to them and see if there's a way that we can connect in real life. People do this all the time. Some of us do it without even thinking. If we see a comment that is really, really, really offensive to us, I know I do this. If you see a comment that's really offensive and you see that person just going on and on and on and on in an offensive manner, most of us are going to go to that person's name and we're either going to hit hide comment, because you can do that now. Hide comment because it was so offensive, I don't want to see it anymore. Or some of us will go further and we'll go to that person's name and we'll hit block. All right. So this is happening. This kind of transaction is happening all the time. Neighborhood Facebook groups or local community-driven apps like Nextdoor are great examples of ways to foster real life relationships with those who live close to you. Now, I will say on the app Nextdoor, I've actually only heard people really complaining about this particular app because a lot of people use it to profile people of color. All right. So when you're talking about community, again, this is an opportunity. And I know that the person that spoke on it actually said they were using it as an opportunity to address their racist neighbors through this app. It allowed them to see who in their neighborhood was actually profiling people of color that came through their neighborhood. So even in community building and relationship building, sometimes we can actually use things like this to bring correction to our community. All right. Sometimes you can use apps like this to find out who is hindering relationships in your community. In my life, he says, one of the most helpful things I've found to drive missional relationships in hospitality is an app called GroupMe. It's one of the many group messaging apps where you can create a different group for any purpose and easily communicate with one another, add new numbers, etc. It makes communication and event planning super quick and easy. Meeting your neighbors may not always be easy, but it is possible. Once you get into the habit of identifying those you can invite into your world, move on to building rhythms for making hospitality a way of life. So, here are some questions today to consider. Do you practice greeting people always, or is it more like sometimes? Is your style more the almost never rule? In what ways can you initiate a conversation with someone new this week? I'm going to be initiating some conversations as I go out this week and take care of my normal errands to places that I already go. What is one creative step you could take to practice biblical hospitality? It might be baking cookies for the neighbor, throwing a party to usher in the start of college football season, etc. What would you need to do in order to make this creative idea a reality? How can you leverage technology to create relationships with others without using technology to foster your own isolation? Good morning, to beloved. So one of the Facebook groups that I'm in is a group for couples, and it is run by another set of pastors, and they're in Virginia. But one of the things that they do through this group is they allow people to post positive messages, positive teaching. But now they've kind of moved to the second step, which is trying to get people to do more than meet online, but to meet in real life. So now they have moved from just positive messages to inviting people every Friday in April to actually come out and meet other married couples. That's a great example of taking a group from online to real life. Is everybody in the group going to show up? Probably not. Maybe only the people that live in the region might show up. Some people might actually be willing to drive or to fly in, depending on how much they feel invested in this group, or depending on whether or not they simply want to get away from their normal surroundings and maybe treat it as a weekend trip and incorporate that group activity in. So the purpose of biblical hospitality, right, is to get outside of our comfort zones. And we can only do that is we are actually intentional and we start moving towards that as a goal. It's not just enough to say, maybe one day I'll get around to it, but also understanding that hospitality doesn't have to be awkward. You can start incorporating it into your day, into everything that you do, into the places that you go, into the places that you go eat on a regular basis. All right. So, love, the mark of a kingdom disciple. Love. Give me a moment. Take a moment, and if you can, in the comment box, tell me what you think love is. Give me your short definition of love if you can. Love is, fill in the blank. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to get something on the screen. Fill in the blank. Love is. Love is actions. I hear you. Love is actions. All right. Anybody else? Most of us know love is kind. Most of us know 1 Corinthians 13. Love is the only way. I like that, Lady Andrea. Love is the only way. Yeah, we're seeing what hatred is getting our country right now. It's not really moving us forward. Love, the mark of a kingdom disciple. In the upper room on the night before his crucifixion, Jesus spoke these very familiar words. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. John 13:34 and 35. Some of us need this on a little sticky tab, and we just need to carry it around at least for 30 days. Just at least 30 days. We need it on our refrigerator. We need it on a little door hanger when we come in the house. We need it in a picture frame, right? We might even need a little picture frame of it in our restroom. He said, you don't have to prove your discipleship. He said, by this, all men, not some men, not black men or white men, not gay men or straight men, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love one for another. So what does that mean? It means that as I'm trying to practice this, all right, as I'm trying to practice going out and loving my neighbor, all right, I cannot bypass loving the fellow disciples. What would our world look like if the white Christians loved the black Christians? Somebody's going to say, I know somebody's going to say, they already love them. Really? What would happen if white Christians decided that they were going to get together and they were actually going to practice love of black Christians? What would our society look like if just the white Christians, the ones who named Christ, stood up and said, we're going to stand in solidarity with our black Christian brothers who are hurting right now, who are mourning their losses, who are feeling traumatized by our society. What would that look like? And how would that change the conversation around the sincerity of white Christians? I'm just asking the question. All right? And I'm not talking about one or two white pastors who stand up and say something, because we have that. There's Andy Stanley, there's Lou Giglio, there's Stephen Furtick, there's what's the other guy named Carl Lentz, there's Ron Carpenter. So there's Russell Moore. He's the only one I've seen male from the SBC that's standing up. So I can name some people, right? But what if it was a collective response to what is happening in our society? And what if we actually got serious about the disciples' love one for another? What if they came together and they said, you know what? It was through spiritual mechanisms that the disease of racism was validated and permeated our society, because religious people gave it credence. Religious people gave it credit. What if we realized that and said, what can we do as white Christians to utterly, completely, and totally denounce this as a whole? And what can we do to be able to minister love to our black brothers and sisters who have felt degraded, humiliated, traumatized, horrified by the things that they see happening in this country towards their community? What would that do for the country if we were the first ones that openly started the conversation and the path to healing? What if it were actually the white Christians that said, we know we've been petitioning about abortion, and we know we've been petitioning about homosexuality, and we know we've been petitioning about the right to use guns, but what if we actually took our congressional political power, and what if we actually put it behind the case for reparations for black people? What would that actually do for people's perception about Christ? By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Somebody said love is action, right? Love is not just, oh, I see your pain. But love is, I'm going to jump in with you in your pain, and we're going to do something about it. We're going to do what is within our power to do. And you cannot tell me it's not in your power to do it. You can't convince me that it's not in your power, because I see how we use our power for other things in this country to get legislation passed. So you cannot tell me it's not in your power to do it. The question is it in your will to do it? All right? And that's just one example. 3 times in this passage, Jesus told his disciples they are to love each other. 3 times he emphasized this key identifying factor of a disciple. He said that if we, as modern day disciples, love one another, all men will know that we are reflecting him as his disciples. So the question we need to answer today is, what is love and how do we do it? What is love and how do we do it? The biblical definition of the Greek word for love, agape, is compassionately and righteously pursuing the well-being of another. Oh boy. Let me read that one more time. The actual definition of agape, and I want you to think about it. I want you to let it sit in you, and I want you to meditate on this today. Agape is compassionately and righteously pursuing the well-being of another. So, all the data right now shows that Black America's well-being is at an all-time low. Whether it is education, whether it is prison, whether it is housing, whether it is home ownership, whether it is finances, whether it is health, all of these data points and indicators are showing our country that Black America for the past 50 years has not been able to really move the needle when it comes to any of these particular issues. So that means socially we become more integrated, but when it comes to economics, the needle really has not moved. So it is the illusion of inclusion. It's the illusion of, because we are in closer proximity to our other counterparts, that we're doing better. But the data shows that's not true. All right? And so if I say I'm living and walking in agape, if I say I believe in agape, then there's something on the inside of me that, if the Spirit of God is on the inside of me, there's something in me that's going to reach out to compassionately and righteously pursue the well-being of another. I'm not going to say, well, they just need to pull themselves up by their invisible bootstraps. If I'm compassionately and righteously pursuing the well-being of another, then that means that I'm actually going to stop and I'm going to listen to what my fellow brothers and sisters are consistently telling me. Because the station has not changed. All right? Some of these research and data, right, are coming out, and Black people are saying, okay, water is wet. We've been telling you this. You all just don't believe us. So now you got to go do research and come back with the same data that we've been telling you about for 50 years. So we're not impressed. We're not impressed by the data or the research, because if you're in a lived experience, you already know what the data and the research is going to tell you because you've been living it. You've been experiencing it. The problem has been, we're telling you what our community is suffering from. We're telling you why people are grieving. We're telling you why people have grievances. We're telling you why people feel traumatized. But are you listening? So we don't expect, right? We don't expect everybody in the world to listen. But we do expect those who name the name of Christ, who say they have the love, the agape of God. If you say you have the love of God, we do expect you to listen. Okay? So agape is compassionately and righteously pursuing the well-being of another. It is placing someone else's needs and advancement higher than they may even set for themselves, and certainly higher than you set your own. So now I got to ask, is there anybody that I can point to that is actually setting the needs and the advancement of Black people higher than they set their own? I'm thinking. Okay. Higher than they set their own. Nope. If you know of someone who's doing that, please give me a name. Email me and I will feature that person. I will tell other people about them. This doesn't have anything to do with liking someone. In fact, you can love people you don't like because love is an intentional choice to do good for another. Love is an action and a commitment. It includes a desire for the other person to be better off simply because you are in their life. So you're going to tell me my white brothers and sisters who love me can walk around knowing that my community is at a disadvantage and be okay with it? You're going to tell me my white brothers and sisters can have a multi-million-dollar facility to run their ministry, and they go 4 or 5 blocks in the other direction, and there are Black churches foreclosing and with for sale signs in front of them? You're going to tell me that those same brothers and sisters on the other side of town cannot see? Love is an action and a commitment. It includes a desire for the other person to be better off simply because you are in their life and bringing the will of God to bear in their life. Jesus distinguishes love from an emotional feeling when he issues his statement on love as an actual command. A new commandment I give you. Because you do realize most people only see love as a choice. But for the believer, love is not just a choice. Love is a command. And that's where we get in trouble. Because we actually think that love is a choice, right? We think, well, I can love you, but I don't have to love you, right? No, love for the believer is a command. Jesus specifically uses the word commandment in relationship to love. We can rarely command our feelings to do anything at all, but we can always command our actions through the power of our mind and will. Yes. So when people say, well, what's the difference between the ungodly and the godly? Listen, for the godly, love is a command. I don't get to not love you. I may not like your attitude. I may not like your personality. I may not like your behavior, but love is the command. All right? We can command our actions through the power of our mind and our will. Jesus established a permanent relationship between his disciple in love. Love is the mark, the identifying badge of a disciple. If you choose to use your words or actions to belittle someone else, even if you do not agree with that person, you are not speaking or acting as a kingdom disciple. This is especially important for those of us in our social media society, right? Where everybody is clapping back. Even in how we address societal issues, it is so very easy to write everybody off. It is very easy to get into the attitude of forget them all. I know people use the other F. Forget them all. I'm just going to do me. But then you're not acting as a kingdom disciple. You're just acting as a person out of your carnal desires, out of your carnal mind, and out of your carnal attitude. So if we are kingdom disciples, we have to watch the way that we speak to people online. Those we know, those who are also believers, but also those who do not know God. So if I make a comment online, like I made a comment the other day, and I was sharing some information that we've already gone over here in Daring Dialogues, and it was on a public post, all right? And the person came back and they said, I don't want to be disrespectful, but do you have some links for your statement? Because people say stuff all the time, but they don't come with receipts. They don't come with the actual evidence. Now, I could have taken offense at that, but I didn't. I was like, sure I can. And I went, did my little search engine, and I was able to find an article that was from a valid source that I could link in there for him to see that this was not just some ramblings of some internet crazy person, because we do have that going on the internet. And he was able to see that, yes, the information I shared was factual, and there was a link that he could read, and that link inside of it had other sources that he could go to about the information. And then somebody else came back and said, thank you for sharing this with us. And I said, as I always do, no problem, because that's what I like to do. I like to share information and make people aware of things. I'm going to tell you now, there are people I know that follow me around social media, and they follow you too. Facebook makes it very easy to see what your friends are liking. So you can see pages that your friends are liking. You can see, Facebook will notify you when your friends on your timeline, when your friends are commenting on other subjects. They'll notify you when your friends are commenting. And you can go to those pages and see what your friends are saying. What is the point I'm making? The point I'm making is that if you're a kingdom disciple, it is important for you to make sure that you're actually speaking in love and not clapping back all over the internet. All right? Make sure you're speaking in love, because people are watching you. People are watching you. People are following you. They're following your conversations that you're having with other people online. And sometimes people are just checking you out. They want to know, are you consistent? Or are you on your page? Because I've seen this a couple of times, and I'm getting ready to close. I've seen this a couple of times where people will be cursing people out. They'll be saying all of this ugly stuff, right? And then somebody will go to that person's page and click on it, and they'll see all of these like flowery stuff and Jesus love you memes and doves and flowers. And then they'll come back to the public post and they'll say, wow, like, I'm gonna need you to practice what you preach. Right? You're over here on this page cursing people out, but I go to your page and you're supposed to be a Christian, or you're supposed to be a believer, right? So social media has opened you up really to a level of public scrutiny. People want to know, if you say that you're a believer, that you are who you are, who you are, who you are across every single platform. All right. Doesn't mean that you share the same material across platforms, right? If you follow me on Instagram, you know I like to share art tips. I like to share things about fashion and color and things of that nature. I like to share what I'm eating and what I'm cooking. I don't share that on Facebook because I have a different set of people that follow me on Instagram. But what should be consistent across the platforms is my attitude, right? What should be consistent across the platforms is my character. It's my behavior. I shouldn't be Pollyanna on Facebook and video vixen on Instagram, right? That becomes confusing to people. They're trying to figure out who exactly are you, because you're not consistent in your attitude or in your behavior or in your character across platforms. So choosing your words wisely as a disciple matters. If you're not going to carry the name of Christ, I'm not talking to you. If you're not going to carry the name believer or Christian, I'm not talking to you. But if you say that you are a saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, fire baptized, running for your life, on fire for Jesus Christian, if you say that you're a woman or man of God, or if you say that you're a kingdom person or a kingdom disciple, then there are certain things that the kingdom expects from you and from its citizens. All right? So we can't really get upset when people are saying, listen, you said you were a kingdom disciple, but you're not matching what discipleship is. You're not matching what discipleship says. You're actually being rude to people online, and it's bringing a stain on all of us. You're saying things online. You're showing things online that brings into question the character and nature of Christ. Now, I'm not talking about people who have a calling to be confrontational about things. I think sometimes we confuse confrontational with just being outright rude. You don't have to be rude to be confrontational. All right? So as kingdom disciples, I want us to think about that love, agape, not the eros, not the storge, not the phileo, okay? But agape, I'm going to read it one more time. Compassionately and righteously pursuing the well-being of another. That means I'm going to pursue your well-being, but I'm going to stay in the lane of righteousness while I do it. I don't have to get out of pocket. I don't have to do something unrighteous to pursue your well-being. I just have to tell the truth, and I have to tell it in love. I just have to do things that are going to be for your well-being without breaking any laws. It's possible. It really is. It's possible to be compassionate and to pursue the righteous well-being of other people and not break any laws to do it. All right? You may have to rewrite some laws, but you don't have to break any laws to do it. I'm not talking about civil disobedience. I'm not talking about protest. I'm talking about what are some basic things that people can do to say, I care about you. I care about your well-being. What can we do to help you be well? What can we do to help you in wellness? Right now, one of the most major things in history is going on. Black people's well-being in this country is being targeted. So the question then becomes, what can I do if I'm not a Black American? What can I do to help facilitate well-being for Black people in this country that doesn't break any laws? Think about it. All right? If you're a Black American, how can I continue to facilitate my well-being and the well-being of my people without breaking any laws? Same thing. It's agape. How can I facilitate my own well-being and the well-being of my people in this country without breaking any laws? Can I provide a safe space? Can I provide an ear? Can I provide some financial resources or wherewithal to help my people facilitate well-being? All right. Sometimes we make it more spiritual without just getting to the practical definition. The practical definition of agape is to compassionately, right? Compassionately, lovingly facilitate well-being of others without breaking any laws. It's to pursue righteous compassion. Love is righteous compassion. And so if we think about it in that term, love is righteous compassion. How can I do something that's going to be righteous with compassion to show the people around me that I care about you, that I see you, that I notice you, that I am with you, that I recognize that something unjust is happening to you? All right. Thank you for my extra time today. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I hope that I have said something that was helpful for you on today. Remember, if you are healed, ask the Lord, how can you facilitate healing in the life of someone else today? Sometimes that healing comes from a good cup of coffee and an ear. Sometimes that healing comes from, let me buy you a bus pass for the week. Sometimes that healing comes from, let me give you a hug because you haven't had a physical touch for years. Think about and ask the Lord to help you facilitate compassionate righteousness and healing on today. All right. I love you with the love of the Lord. I hope that you have a great and wonderful day. Tomorrow, we're going to be back talking about Black history, immigration, and this letter that I received. I have some concerns, but we're going to cover that on tomorrow. And I'm going to try to do it in the most loving and compassionate way I can. All right. Thank you again for your time and attention. Hit the share button, share this, bring a friend tomorrow, because we're gonna talk. All right, we're gonna have a serious talk. All right. Thank you again for your time and attention. Take care and God bless. Thank you again, Lady Judy, for hanging in with us on our YouTube live stream. I know it was jumping a little bit, but hopefully that will clear up once it edits. Thank you so much again for your time and attention. Take care and God bless.